Welcome back to Johnny Builds, where we just bought a house. Now, over the course of the next year, you're gonna be seeing a ton of renovation content on my channel, and coming soon, I'll have a video tour of the house, show you all the things that are wrong with it, show you all the projects that I have planned. But first, I need to build out some garage storage and a workshop so I can work at the house. So this is a 2-car garage. I'm gonna take up half of it for the garage storage and for the workspace area and leave the other half so Katie can park her car in here. Now, as you see, I've already moved in my Husky tool cabinet and my Husky Workbench. This video is sponsored by the Home Depot, and I'm working with Husky this year to show you all the awesome products. You'll be seeing a lot of that. But today we're gonna focus on building this shop storage system with an integrated cabinet and a workbench area and a standalone workbench that you can build in about 1 hour. Now, it's Friday at 5:48. I'm gonna do this whole project in one weekend. And first up, we need to run to Home Depot. At Home Depot, I grabbed a couple pairs of hinges, a few boxes of screws, and a bunch of 2x4s, and I'll have a complete cut list and free PDF plans for this project linked down below. I'm also using MDF project panels purely for the convenience. It's a little bit more cost effective to use full 4x8 sheets of MDF. Okay, I've got all that material back here in the garage. It is now 7:19 p.m. on Friday night. Katie's got dinner ready for me. I'm gonna run over to the other house. I'll be back here in the morning to start putting this project together. Okay, it is 9:35 on Saturday morning. I just got back over to the house. Running a little late this morning, but that's okay. We're gonna start by making the storage that goes along that wall. Now, it consists of 2 sections. One's 8 foot long, one is 4 foot long, and we're gonna start by making those 8-foot frames. I built this whole project with just 3 power tools: a drill, a circular saw, and a jigsaw. Having a speed square and a few clamps is also handy, and I'll link this extendable Husky Square and a few of those other Husky tools that I have in my shop down below. All the cross members for the frames are 21 inches long, and you need to cut 21 of them. Again, don't worry about the dimensions, as I'll have a full cut list linked down below. The shelves consist of an upper and lower frame held together by 72-inch uprights that stand up off the floor. The backs of the frames tie into the studs in the wall. To make the frames, I'm using full-size 8-foot-long 2x4s and screwing into the ends of those 21-inch cross members I just cut, using that speed square to keep everything lined up. Also, adding a clamp helps to keep everything in alignment as you drive in those screws. Once the first frame was done, I could build a second identical frame. I'm cutting all 4 uprights at once by clamping them together to ensure they're all the same height, and it also just saves a little bit of time. 3 of those uprights are going to get attached to that 8-foot long section starting on the far right end. I made sure they were nice and square and then attached the upright with some 2.5-inch screws. At this point, you only attach the uprights to that upper shelf, and then that lower shelf gets attached later on. I attached the second upright the same way, and then that third upright on the left end is attached with half of the 2x4 hanging off the left end so we can tie into that 4-foot section that we'll build next. Next, I marked out the placement of the shelves on the wall and then came back and marked the stud locations, which are 16 inches on center in my garage. Now I can stand up that 8-foot section against the wall, shift it into its final position, and then use another 2x4 to help brace the back of that shelf that's resting against the wall and hold everything up. I made sure the shelf was level before attaching the studs in the wall, and I'm using those 3¼ inch screws. I marked the locations of the lower shelf with a straight edge, raised that shelf up into position, and then used a few 2x4 scraps to help wedge everything in place. Once that shelf is lined up with that mark I made, I drove in more of those 3¼ inch screws to attach it into the studs. Then, making sure that shelf was level, I can tie it into those front uprights with some 2.5-inch screws. Okay, we got that 8-foot section up, everything went nice and smooth. Now we've got to do the same thing again with that 4-foot section to make this a 12-foot long garage storage bench. Everything's gonna be exactly the same, rinse and repeat. Let's do it. The main difference with the 4-foot shelving section is that there are 3 shelves instead of just 2. I cut the long sides of the 4-foot shelves all at once by clamping them together and cutting them in half. I still have 9 of those 21-inch boards left over from those first cuts, and I used all of these to assemble those remaining shelves. I attached that last upright to the left corner on the top shelf and then stood the whole thing up into place. It was a tight fit, but I was able to hammer the 4-foot section into place and then attach that to that 8-foot section. I attached the 4-foot shelf to the studs with more of those 3¼ inch long screws. With that frame secured to the wall, I could add in those 2 remaining shelves. Now make sure to reference the plans for the exact spacing or space them to fit your needs. I placed all those MDF project panels on the bottom using the 3¼ inch panels for the workbench section and then 1/2 inch panels for the remaining shelves. Now this is where I called it quits for the day to switch over to building the 1-hour workbench. Make sure you check out that video as well to see how I built this super simple workbench in less than an hour for super cheap. All right, next step on the garage storage shelves is to seal the MDF with some more of that Total Boat Halcyon varnish. I'm also going to build out a cabinet inside here, add some doors, and then the last step will be putting up some wall control panels. I actually held off on sealing the MDF until a little bit later, and then secured those panels to the frame with some 1¼ screws. To build out a cabinet, I want to close this section off from the shelves to the left and that workbench to the right. I cut a 1/2 inch MDF panel to fit, and then using a jigsaw, I notched in the ends to fit around the 2x4s that are inside the frame. This is actually the only time I use the jigsaw, so if you don't have one, you could totally get away with cutting those notches with a handsaw. To close in that other side, I need to add in a 2x4 scrap piece along the workbench, which I screwed in from the front on that upright and then toe-nailed into the stud from the back. Before I make those cabinet doors, I want to frame in the area behind the doors to create a flat section to stop the doors from swinging too far inwards. I cut a couple 2x4s to fit and then screwed those into place. Next up, I clamp 2 1/2 inch MDF panels together, and then I can cut both doors at one time. For door pulls, I'm just using a Forstner bit to knock out an 1¼ inch hole versus trying to add some unnecessary hardware. I used a combo square to keep the hinges lined up while I attached them with some 1/2 inch screws. Now, as you'll see, attaching these doors would have been a lot easier if I had a second set of hands. It took some doing to get everything lined up, but the doors came out real nice and even and very well balanced. Now I can add that Total Boat Halcyon varnish to seal the MDF on the doors and seal the rest of those MDF shelves. To build out some of the small shelves inside the cabinet, I wanted to use up some of those 2x4 scraps, so I ripped this plywood panel in half and then attached those 2x4s under the plywood as feet. I placed that shelf inside the cabinet and then built out a second shelf, which I attached on top of that first. Moving on to those wall control panels, I ripped 3 of these 4-inch wide plywood strips, which I can attach to the studs in 3 places, giving me a spot to attach those panels. Back to the cabinet, and I can paint those doors now that that varnish is dry. And you definitely want to seal the MDF if you're going to paint, because MDF is just going to soak up all that paint and you'll have to apply a bunch of extra coats. I use this Total Boat Elixir paint, which comes in these really convenient bags, and even sealing the MDF, it took 2 coats to completely cover the doors. And with that, this garage storage and workbench was all done by 6 p.m. on Sunday evening. All right, it is about 6 p.m. on Sunday evening and I'm done. I was able to easily build this entire garage storage system and this 1 hour workbench using just limited tools. Super easy. I've got PDF plans linked down below for both. I also just released a video on this 1 hour workbench. At the same time, I'm dropping this video, so make sure you check out that one as well. Now, like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I just bought my dream house. I've got all sorts of awesome renovation content coming your way in the near future. Make sure you get subscribed so you don't miss any of that. All right, thanks for checking this one out, and I'll see you back here next time.